Hey everybody, my name is Eduardo Castello, but everybody calls me Eddie, so please do so. I'm here in order to introduce you the combination of two things that apparently don't do much with each other, but together they do something interesting, right? It's the field of robotics, my field of expertise, and blockchain-based technology. Disclaimer. I don't think that blockchain is the solution to every single problem humanity has. But me, as a roboticist, I found it to be a young Swiss knife to push the limits of my field. And this is a little bit what you're going to see in this presentation. So the world of robotics and AI is a controversial topic. I've been a roboticist for almost 15 years. I built all kinds of robots. And always I ended up myself in the middle of a dichotomy, right? I found people that were saying, oh, the world of robots and AI, they are the beginning of the utopia. They will free us from the work we can do or we don't want to do. Also, I met people next to my lab and doing a lot of coffees and beers that were telling me, no, this field is the beginning of the dystopia. These systems can cause severe havoc in our societies. So somehow, I always found myself in between these two places, right? But one of the things that I realized from these conversations is that a commonality is the concept of autonomy. Somehow we have a problem with this concept because we want these systems to be more independent so they can do the stuff we don't want to do alone. But at the same time, when we give more autonomy to these systems, we open the door for these systems to commit the mistakes that we already have. Also, to do them in a faster and more efficient way. We have a fear that these systems will misjudge us and will put our world into havoc, right? But somehow, when we think about autonomy, we tend to think about robots that have arms and wheels and humanoid robots and these kind of things, no? But also, in these days, many people think about ChatGPT, yeah? So ChatGPT is somehow like an oracle, right? Is this system that has the right answer, right? For the right question. So somehow it's supposed to give you the information you need in the moment you need it, right? It's like an oracle, a modern oracle. Regardless of how accurate this system is, somehow we are trying to portray a different type of an autonomy, right? And I'm going to give you some examples. So, for example, this system that you can see here is a bicycle, a lightweight vehicle that we developed in MIT, and it has a very particular mechanism. So the rear wheel opens up in the moment that the bicycle needs to go to one place or another in a completely autonomous way. But also, when you ride it, when you call the tricycle and then you want to ride it yourself, you can basically ride it as a normal bicycle. So what we did in MIT is that we studied how these systems in large numbers can move societies, right? Can move cities, can understand what's the state of a city or a society, right? So autonomy has this societal impact as well. But also in MIT we developed these systems that could also have autonomy in an emotional plane. So what you can see here is a couple of robots that we program in order to extend the emotional autonomy of kids by understanding their signs and interpret their feelings that they were having, right? So these two robots that are called Nows told stories to children with autism and interpreted a role in which the characters have expressed fear or express happiness or express sadness so the kids could understand what that meant. But I would like to tell you a personal story, right? So what you can see here in this picture is two Japanese men. One is my PhD advisor. The other is his robot clone, okay? So one of them is called Professor Ishiguro. He was my PhD advisor for around 7 years. And what you are seeing here is basically his robot doppelganger, right? So Professor Ishiguro wanted to solve a problem that we all had at some point in time, which is what do I do in order to be at two places at the same time? This is his solution, like for this, right? So Professor Ishiguro, in his office, was teleoperating like this robot in places where he didn't want to be physically, right? So with this system, I've seen Professor Ishiguro attend presentations like this, conference talks, even family gatherings, right? But there's a caveat like to this, which is that Professor Ishiguro didn't want to move from his office, but someone had to move the robot. And for almost 2 years, that was me. So every airport security guy in the Western world knows my face because for 2 years I travel with a human torso in my luggage. So imagine. Yeah. The thing is that when I was traveling with Professor Ishiguro's like robot, somehow, obviously, I had the thought that what will happen if the robot will pay me, to move him around, right? What will happen if the robot will have not only an autonomy, to move around or basically interact with people, but also to try, to care, for its existence, and then, try, to secure everything that it needs in order to keep on doing its actions, especially without me. Somehow, I thought, what will happen if the robot will travel alone, and then some robot part is broken? How he could incentivize someone to buy that part for the robot and install it properly, right? So all these thoughts were developed during the years, and when I went to MIT, I got together with 5 superstars, and we came together with the idea of Gaka-chu, which is what I'm going to introduce you in the following video. So let's meet Gaka-chu.
It is clear that robots are going to have great economic impact. Still, they can break or malfunction, and someone has to repair them. How can robots provide their own maintenance? If they pay for their repair service, they become peers, not just tools. We now ask ourselves, can a robot become an entrepreneur? If yes, what does it need to become one? In an open market society, it is important that robots offer goods or services. To increase their autonomy, robots need to also get rewarded for their labor and be able to invest the benefits in their own sustainability. These ideas have been discussed before, but there have been extremely limited practical advances on robots' economic autonomy, and no prototype of an economically autonomous robot has been built until now. For instance, current robots are not able to accept payments from potential clients and/or pay service providers for their maintenance. Novel technologies, such as blockchain-based smart contracts, are offering new solutions to these problems. A smart contract is computer code embedded in the blockchain that directly controls the transfer of digital assets between parties. A robot using this technology operates in the physical space, but part of its interaction logic is described in a smart contract. Thus, the robot can perform its functions in both its economic and its physical environment. Let's take a look at the real proof of concept of an economically autonomous robot. Meet Gaka-chu, a robot arm that is self-employed in the making of customized physical goods, which it sells online in auctions. Gaka-chu uses its income to purchase supplies or assistance, or even to repay loans from investors. Gaka-chu starts with receiving a loan from an investor to cover initial costs. Then it selects a keyword trending online. It translates the word into Japanese and paints it on a canvas. Once the painting is complete, Gaka-chu puts it up for auction. After the sale, the physical painting is sent to the winning bidder's address, and the digital ownership certificate is delivered as a non-fungible token. Finally, the payment is transferred directly to Gaka-chu's blockchain-based wallet. Now, Gaka-chu can use its generated income to purchase human assistance or supplies from a web shop, or to repay an initial investor. During a 6-month period of self-employment, Gaka-chu created and sold 4 paintings. First, it used a loan from an initial investor to cover the startup costs. Then, Gaka-chu held 4 successful auctions and received payments to its own wallet. It used its funds to repay the investor loan and purchase supplies. At the end, Gaka-chu had earned more than 2 ETH and had interacted with humans economically in 3 different ways: as an investment vehicle, as a self-employed agent, and as a customer.
Interesting, right? So let me do a quick review about what Gaka-chu does for a living, right? So at the beginning, Gaka-chu tries to search the internet for trendy concepts, and then in the moment that it gets one, it translates it into Japanese, right? Then starts painting the picture. So once this is completed, there is an auction, right? And then the winner of this auction gets the picture. So this picture is sent physically, the canvas, or digitally with an NFT to the winner address. And then the payment that this winner is willing to pay for the picture goes directly into Gakachu's wallet, right? Not to the owner of Gaka-chu, not us, actually, but to Gaka-chu. Then Gaka-chu uses the created revenue in order to buy everything that it needs in order to paint the next pictures, right? So paint, canvases, human assistants, etc., right? So if we take a quick look about the finances of Gaka-chu for the 6 months that we run this experiment, we can see that at the beginning, we have a period in which someone had to put seed money, for Gaka-chu to buy the first paint, canvases, etc., right? That was us. We lend money to the robot. But then there was a second period in time in which Gaka-chu started to paint these pictures and get them sold. At the beginning, at the end of this 6 months period time, Gaka-chu repaid us part of the money that we invested in him and acquired new resources for the next pictures that he was going to paint. If you're interested, you can follow our friend in his Twitter account, now X, I believe, and check all the auctions that we completed and all the paintings that Gaka-chu finished. But somehow I would love to go back to the first slide of the presentation, right? Because somehow our idea is that robots are a tricky thing. We find ourselves always in this dichotomy, right? But somehow the concept of autonomy is a very narrow concept that we have in the field, right? If we will be able to extend it a little bit, we will be able to include other agents, right? So somehow one of the things that I learned in this research is that it's not us versus the robots, it's us with the robots, right? And with all these new technologies, we might be able to learn some lessons in order to include other agents into the equation, right? So, for example, something like this. If you take out the robot, right, and then you put other type of agent, for example, a river, for example, a forest, for example, a cultural, a heritage place, right, you might be able to transact with this agent, right? And what we discover is that our society is transactional, right? Everything seems to be part of a contract, right? So in the moment that you make the agent part of this transactional dynamics, you remove it from being a mere means. You elevate this agent to an end by itself, which is one of the problems that we have with many of these agents, right? So somehow, one of the key takeaways that we received is that if we are able to include these agents into a transactional relationship with us, we might be able to understand them not just a means, something to exploit, but an end by itself, like what we did with Gaka-chu. So I think this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.